Welcome everyone to Real Estate Power Play. It's another Tuesday at noon. Today it is just me, Ronald Walker, and Marty Grisanti. We're going to be talking about how to get involved in real estate investing. Like how do you jump in? How do you get started? What does that look like? What are some of the common pitfalls and thought processes behind getting started? And being able to jump in and maximize not only deal flow, but building that business from point A, up to a reoccurring business model that is consistent and not just something that's on the side. So, Marty, man, how are you doing today?
I'm good, buddy. I'm doing good. I mean, I'm a little cranky, for being honest. Yep. I'm
what are you cranky about?
Well, I'm fasting right now, so I haven't eaten anything. And on top of that, I'm just a big dummy sometimes with my addresses. So I had my lawn guys go to the wrong house. The grass is freaking crazy long, right now in some of my properties. So you're coordinating who cuts where, because when you own properties kind of all over, you have to do that. It can't just be one person that does them. It's the fun stuff. No one talks about mowing the lawns and who's going to do that, but that's that can get annoying.
The devil is in the details, man. I had, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I was trying to get a hold of one so I could get it ready to list on the market, and couldn't get a hold of one. Another guy went dark. Finally called one. He's like, I can get to it on Monday. I was like, it's freaking going live. Like I'm supposed to get pictures tomorrow morning and go live the next day. So I was like, yo, if I gave you $150, can you get it done today? And he's like, yeah, I'll go out there and do it. It was like, all right, yes, good. We need it done. Sometimes time frame is more important. So
100%.
That's awesome, man. So we're jumping in. We're going to talk about how to get involved in real estate investing. And guys, if you're watching this, share the video, give us a like, ask some questions as you're coming through here, especially the questions you guys have, so we can really answer those detailed questions or the spots where you're struggling. Put them in the comments, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, on my Facebook group, on Marty's group, wherever you're at. Put those in there so we can answer them for you as we're going through this. So, Marty, I think before we get started in the ways of getting involved, I'd love to hear kind of your story on how you got involved and what gave you the belief really that this was the direction you wanted to go for building your wealth, for kind of taking your life in your direction. Kind of unpack that for us and for the group.
Yeah, appreciate that. So we started by buying single family houses, and, really the why was, or, the how was, well, we wanted to be educated first. So I spent a good 3 to 6 months on Bigger Pockets, listening to every podcast, and then just talking to people who've already done it. And there was a consensus, Ronnie, and it was, you just jump into it. And it's never the right time. You never have enough money. You never know what you're doing fully, until you actually buy that first property. And so that's what we did. We jumped right in, and the first property was a tax auction sale. So back in the day, you could pick these up. Now they're non-existent in here in New York, but we were able to buy it was a tax foreclosure from a third party. So, if the county couldn't sell it at the auction, they would be able to, take it back. And I think that's what happened with this third party who would buy the liens from the county or the city, took back the property, and then we were able to make an offer to them. And it was a cash deal. We took out every single dollar that we had to do it, and my partner and I, and we bought it. And we own it to this day. So that was 2015. So nice. The whole point, though, was that we knew as our W-2, we weren't going to be able to become the owners of the company, right? Again, this is not for everybody, but that's what we were looking for. We were looking for like real ownership of something that could potentially lead us to financial freedom. And it's not the one that's going to do it, but it's that first property of a long domino of properties that will get you that financial freedom. So I think people kind of get crazy in their head. They're like, okay, so I want to get here, but you know, to get there, you still got to do the first thing, which is buying that first deal, and then learning all the things that come across that. Obviously, you can learn a ton from Ronnie and I, or just listening to our podcast or listening to Bigger Pockets to kind of minimize those mistakes, but you still need to go and jump in and learn it. So that's what we did. We knew what we wanted to do. We wanted to have something more, have something that we could depend on, because you can't always depend on your commission checks because we were sales guys. So we wanted something that's like, hey, what's something that would be a consistent monthly income in case something, you know, didn't go great, something didn't go well with our W-2. So that was that first initial step, was like getting into that, buying the properties, and you know, really seeing what that would, you know, do for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, and I like to kind of harp on that, right? Is real estate investing, it can provide, it's one of the easiest things to provide financial freedom to somebody, right? If you're not making, you know, 7, 10, 15 grand a month, it's one of the easiest ways to jump up. You know, a lot of people I talk to that are not really entrepreneurs, they talk about like, especially young guys, you know, they're like, oh, I'm going to go into trucking. And it's like the easiest way for them to make 60 grand, right? And it's like, okay, like that's cool. That might be the easiest way for you to go making 12, 14 bucks an hour to 60 grand. But then you're capped, right? Like then that's a long trajectory to get any more than that. Real estate allows us to be able to jump to that 100 grand, 150 grand. I don't want to say easily, but the trajectory is a lot more, it's a lot shorter than others. And the real thing that I love you to touch on is it's not for everybody, right? Yeah. The stress that comes in from doing that first deal and really having to feel like you don't know what you're doing and you're out of your depth and you're just sinking. The money management aspect, the QuickBooks aspect, the connecting with other people and making sure other people are there, sharing with what you want. Like, it's very difficult to jump in, but guys, it's also extremely rewarding. And it's a way that can provide that freedom and almost that life that you've dreamed of, okay, I have the flexibility, I have the freedom, I'm contributing to the world, and it allows that to happen. You know, when I got started, it was 2012. I was a private client banker at JP Morgan Chase, and I was managing the bank accounts and investment funds for people between the $250,000 mark and the $5 million mark, right? So those were the clients that I was working with. And one day I'm working back, my top 5 clients, all close to that $5 million mark. 3 of them were actually in real estate. Well, one of them, one day, because I got a notification whenever there was large deposits or anything like that, there was a deposit of $3 million deposited in this guy's account. And came in, and I'm like, gosh, what do people do that gets them $3 million deposited in the account, right? Like, this is what I'm thinking. It's blowing my mind, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up calling him up. And I was like, hey, I won't say his name, but like, hey, so-and-so, blah, blah. I just want to, it's like, you mind if I ask you a question? Like, what do you do? Like, what do you actually do? And he was like, well, that one, we just flipped an apartment complex in East Dallas. And he kind of gave me the story, and he's like, I was like, well, do you mind if, you know, I take you out to lunch? And I'd helped his mom move some money and some other stuff. And he's like, sure. So we went out to lunch, and he gave me kind of this background of getting involved in rentals and how to get started and all of this. And he kind of pushed me on the journey towards investing in real estate. And so I started going to, you know, the seminars, and I started sitting in classes, and I came across a guy. He was giving a speech. It was actually Lifestyles Unlimited in Dallas. He was the not Dell, not the owner, but he was like the second command. And he's like, you know, I had these 3 properties, and I was going to invest in them, and I ended up just sharing them with a couple investors, and I sold all 3 of them for $18,000. He's like, I did like 5 hours of work, made 18 grand. I was like, whoa, what? You made 18 grand doing what? So I emailed him. At the end, I emailed him, and he responded to me, and he actually pushed me to Sean Terry and Sean Terry's stuff. And that was my journey. I started learning that. At that time, Sean Terry's program was $2,000. I bought the program and I started doing direct mail. And dude, I remember the first time I'm in my office at Chase. I got my phone in my pocket and I'm sitting with a client, and my phone is just ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing all day. It's ringing. I'm freaking out, right? Because I'm getting all these calls. And then I get home and I start working at it. But like that initial push, I mean, it takes a lot of courage, right? If you've only got however much in your bank and you're wanting to jump into it, it's like, oh, I got to spend, $2,000 or $1,000 or $5,000 or education. That can be really nerve-wracking. But then once you find a particular path, like there's almost this tenacity where it's just like, you know what, I've got to figure this out. I know there's going to be pain. I know there's going to be struggle. I know that I'm going to run into things I don't even know yet, but I've got to go through that in order to hit that end goal of financial freedom, of that style of life that I want. And I think that a lot of times that barrier is bigger than a lot of us want to jump into, right? want to do. So, as far as jumping in and getting started, from the entry point standpoint, what are some of those entry points? Like, what are some of those ways, or what is something that's maybe not the right way to jump in, and some other directions that you recommend? Because, you got in just jumping in and buying that first property at a tax sale. I got in by wholesaling my first deal, right? And jumping into wholesaling right away. What would you recommend, I guess, to start off like don't go down this route?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Pitfalls?
That's a great question. So definitely don't buy the cheapest house in a bad neighborhood. That I can tell you. We've done that a few times, and that's, you get lucky if it works out, but it's not like ever like a.
So why is that a problem though? Like, don't we want the cheapest house? Like, what do you mean? Like, unpack that for me. Yeah.
So what can happen is when you're buying properties in, I guess, just what they say, quote unquote, war zone areas, is that a lot of times, and it's not every time, because we have some good tenants in some properties that some would consider, tough areas. But what can happen is there will be times where unfortunately, because of a lot of different issues, mental health, whatever it might be, but you're surrounded by other people in cases like where we had a few properties of like landlords who didn't really take care of their properties, right? So what happens when you don't take care of your properties is that there's a culture behind that where it's like, if you don't take care of this property, then the person that's going to rent it doesn't really care about themselves, and then you better believe they don't care about the property, right? So what that then does is that doesn't create an environment where you're going to be able to, if you fix something, that's going to stay fixed, that you can depend on the rent. You just can't, because the people there are not, again, they're not taking care of themselves, and they're not taking care of, maybe in cases, their animals that they have there. So the animals are doing whatever they want to your property. Maybe if there is, unfortunately, if there's kids, the kids are not being looked after, and that's an issue. And now the property is getting even worse and worse. So it's really tough to change that as a landlord, right, if all around you is in that same position. So that's what I would say is you want to stay, just for your own brain, you want to stay out of that, because you're not capable of that. That's not your responsibility. And that is a societal, government, a lot of different factors that need to come together in order to change that. You're not changing that.
That's good.
So we learned that the hard way, Ronnie. So I would say the number one thing is to not buy the cheapest house in a bad neighborhood, or even the best house in a bad neighborhood. Because guys, the number one thing that people forget, it's the number one rule, but you forget it at times because you're looking at it as a business, Ronnie, is location, location, location. That still matters in investing. Not just where you're going to live in your own property, but where you're investing too. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. I love that. And guys, there's some areas like here in West Michigan when I jumped in, like the properties we could pick up for like $8,000, right? And it's like, ooh, okay, like what's going on? You know what I'm saying? And then you get involved and it's like, oh, okay, that's a place you don't really want to drive through. And if you don't feel safe there and you got to operate there, like that can be a real hiccup, you know. On the other side, you know, another entry point I think is probably the most common in society for people who want to get into real estate is they want to invest in real estate. They want to own properties. They want to build financial freedom. And so they go and they become a realtor, right? And guys, this is a mistake. It's not a mistake to get your license per se, but it is a mistake to think I'm going to be a realtor first and then I'm going to get into investing. And the reason why is being a realtor does not teach you the investing business, right? It does not teach you what it means to be an investor. Being a realtor is a different business model completely. You are negotiating on behalf, and your goal is to sell a property to somebody else. It's not to dictate, is this a good property for me and why, and how am I going to make money over the long term? The incentives for being a realtor do not line up with the same incentives for being an investor. And it can be very deceptive in the sense of, oh, I'm just going to get in the game and then I will get properties over time. Guys, it is very, very common for people to go down the realtor route and then 5 years later, they might only have one property, right? Or 5 years later, they don't have any properties. And I was talking to a guy last year. I was out at a restaurant with a guy in Muskegon, been investing for 30 years, or not investing, been a realtor for about 30 years. Really good guy, really had a good time. He's actually listed some properties for me. And I was like, you know, what do you want? He's like, I would love to pick them up, but I just end up selling all my properties to other investors, all the properties I have, and just getting the commission. And guys, he'd been doing that for 30 years. When he got started, he wanted to build his own portfolio, but he never did because he started working with investors. And whenever he had a property, it was easier. The least resistance was just selling it to an investor, right? And having the investor conversation, but never building it himself. And so, guys, I would say a massive pitfall that you want to avoid is if you're looking to get into real estate investment and become a real estate investor, don't think to yourself, I'm going to be a realtor first. Okay. Never. If you want to be a realtor, it's a totally great track to go down. If you want to get your license as a real estate investor, that's a really good thing. We're not going to talk about the pros and cons of that today. Those are good things. So don't misread me. But the question is, what business do I want to get into? Going down building a realtor business is not the same as building an investment business. And they're completely different and separate things. And so, Marty, jumping in, obviously there's lots of places for people to start. Yeah. Right? We've talked about your story, jumping in, buying a tax property. You still own it today. So it's a rental property, I would imagine.
Yeah.
You know, I jumped in, got started, learned the business, and started with wholesaling and started on the wholesaling route and then graduated and learned from there. What are some of those entry points for people who want to get in, right? Yeah, people who want to invest. What are the types of investing they can do?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think, you know, what you always see is, you know, I'm gonna buy an off-market deal, or I'm gonna, you know, buy something value add, and I'm gonna do the work and then place a tenant, right? Which is typically where you're gonna get your best return, is when you're buying something value add, especially if it's off market. And those deals do happen. People do for their first deals that way. I kind of go at it a different way. I think there's like 3 or 4 types of people, but I'm just going to talk about the 3 types of people. And I see a lot of this. I see a lot of out-of-state investors, Ronnie, who want to buy up a bunch of properties. Maybe they're in California, they're in New York City, maybe in your case, they're in, well, I guess like what, Detroit, and they got a bunch of money, or they're in those nicer areas, and they want to kind of buy some of the more, in those rural areas, maybe they can pick something up a little cheaper than they can in their backyard, right? I would not do that. I really wouldn't. So if you're like, I want to really grow and do something great with my, my money in real estate, I would stay away from just trying to build up this single family rental portfolio. If I'm a busy executive in New York City, I'm going to take my money, instead of doing that, I'm going to put it into a syndication. That's what I'm going to do. That's the time, because again, I don't have the time. And again, I don't want the friction of all these different headaches, all these different tenants. Then you have to find a property manager who's not going to screw you, right? I mean, I hate to put out this like kind of negative feel on it, but the truth is you're going to have to go through some of those headaches in order to get that up and running. And that may seem like a job, right? So if you're not someone who has time, and you're just someone who is a high net worth individual with very little time, then my route would be completely different. And it would be, I would put some money into a deal that's bigger with somebody who knows what they're doing, that is full-time, that's done something like this before. Okay. Now that's crazy, because no one ever really talked about that.
Well, and I think what you're talking about is, just because someone has money doesn't mean that, let me go buy single family real estate, or let me go buy real estate and get into real estate, even in commercial. And I think the reason is because real estate is a small business. One way or another, right? It is a side hustle. It is a business. It's not truly passive. And if you have money on that side and you're looking to get in, like, what you really want is, you want a place to put your money to get a solid return that is secure. Right? That is secure. And because what are the other options, right? When you look at the options of places to put your money, there's not a great deal of options that are a solid return that what it's going to be, that's secure. And so when you start looking at, I would recommend, one, syndication is an opportunity. Look at being a lender, to another guy like Marty, or like me, or like someone that's in your local market, where you can lend them money for a solid return. You know what it looks like. And that way you can trust that money. It's secured on a property, and the return you're going to get. And then there's ways to make a little bit more money. You could go into second liens if you get more comfortable. You can do first liens, and you can work together with the person you're partnering. That's a way to substantially. And I would say that you get to avoid literally all of the headaches of real estate that isn't talked about very much, right? You're talking about managing the tenants. You're talking about managing contractors, the flipping of the property, driving to and fro and checking up. Someone breaking in, right? Like, you don't have to worry about that if you have money. So I'm with you, man. If you have money and you're thinking, I want to get into real estate, it can be a great opportunity to jump in. Don't get me wrong. Like, there are lots of benefits. I'm in this business, but you got to realize, like, okay, what am I jumping into? It is going to take a portion of my time to buy rental properties, to manage rental properties, to get into the fix and flip game. That is going to take time and energy. And if you don't want to do that, I'd look at some other options like lending, or being involved on the passive side in single family or multifamily. So I'm with you. I absolutely love that. What about to people who are on the, they're newer, they're looking to jump into like starting their own business. They want to jump into real estate. They're at a full-time job, maybe making 60 to 200 grand a year. And they're like, I don't want to be a slave here anymore. I want to be my own boss. I want freedom. Marty. Like, this is the direction I want to go.
Yeah. And I agree. And I did too. And just be prepared then to what that means. So in order to have that, like, that saying, you have to live like other people won't, so that you can later on live like they can't.
Yes.
So, you really got to embody that. And so when people talk about their why, I think when I was younger, when I was listening to the podcast and just, your why, it's because it's hard. It's super difficult to continue this journey.
Right.
That's the truth. So your why has to be that much stronger. And it doesn't have to be much stronger, but just enough more than the pain, because there is pain. And for me, I am lazy in a way where just little things, little text messages, calls from tenants, that's a lot for me, right? It's just a lot. And that might be a lot for other people. It may not be anything. For Matt, it's nothing for my partner, right? So that's why we balance each other. What pains him is paying bills, is talking to, getting the insurance figured out, is getting, making sure that this and that and the other are kind of dealt with, right? So, potentially you have someone, or you have a why strong enough, or you have a partner who's going to play off of this with you. It could be your wife who's going to help you. But truthfully, that why has to be super solid in order to continue this journey. Again, not just the one house. We're not talking about one, because that's not going to get you the financial freedom, right? We're talking about the multiple that will get you there. Now, we are also this is about, getting started. So it is the one that's important, but keep that in mind, because if, one of the things I made a mistake, Ronnie, is that I wanted to do real estate investing and I wasn't maybe sure exactly why. Was it because that's what I really wanted to do? Was it that was the way I was going to get to financial freedom? I think there's other ways to get to financial freedom. I just think real estate might be the simplest for me to get there. And so you really got to know that. Like, you really got to be, you got to really know yourself, right? And then I think that's the biggest thing, is know what you're going to not like, and then go from there, right? Are you somebody who's got a team of contractors already that you know of? That's going to be great if you're looking to maybe fix and flip something. I think it really just depends. Like, if you're going to buy something, maybe you want third-party management right away. But I guess I wouldn't go back and do anything differently. I think I'd have to just keep this story going the way it is. But it is interesting to kind of think about it like at 33 and be like, is this really, what would I have done differently? And there's a lot, but I definitely wouldn't change anything either.
That's good. That's good. Because I think we learn a lot on that journey, right? And so, and guys, when we're getting started, I think what Marty's getting at is part of the journey towards freedom is that struggle, right? Like, it is that struggle of going through. So the things that I would say you could jump into, okay? If you want to pursue this journey and jumping in, there's a number of things you can jump into. One, you can jump into wholesaling properties. If you don't have any money, you don't have a W-2, you can't jump, like, you could jump into wholesaling properties. And to really determine which direction you want to go, I would take a list of your strengths and your weaknesses, specifically when it comes to your knowledge level. Like, what do you know? What don't you know? Who do you know? What's your network look like? Who do you know and who don't you know? And can you find properties? And being able to identify and say, okay, I've got contractors, or I've got experience in rehabbing homes, or I don't, and I don't know these people, and I don't know anything. I think just taking a solid inventory and saying, okay, where do I want to start? Wholesaling is a great way. You've got an easy barrier of entry from not having to take down the whole property. You do not have to have much experience or network in order to do it, because you can just partner with other investors to be able to do it. But if you go the wholesaling route, the one thing that you've got to become very, very, very good at is finding deals, right? The wholesaler's chief job is finding the properties from the marketplace to provide them to investors. And so that is a high value skill that has to be focused on. That is harder to do and is getting harder in the market. But understanding, okay, these are the free ways I can drive for dollars. I can market in these ways. And go watch our videos on marketing and getting started, because we outline all of the different ways that you can market and exactly how to do that. And so if you want to get started that in the wholesaling side, That's what you want to focus on. You want to focus on finding deals. You can get started on buying rental properties and building up that passive income. But also with the rental properties, what you're building up is you're building up your net worth, right? You're trading your cash, part of your cash. You're leveraging other people's cash in order to get net worth and cash flow coming in, which is a very great way to get started. You can jump in. You guys can immediately buy a property with equity in it, and you can start investing passively and build up a portfolio, increasing that net worth. And as your net worth increases, you then will have more opportunity. And so you can get in on the rental side. The other side, you can jump into what like Marty talked about with flipping. You can jump in, buy the property, fix it up, and relist it. And then you can flip the property and get started on that side. And then I would say the one that I would recommend, no matter what you do and what angle you want to go after, is partner with somebody who's already doing it, right? Like when you can get inside someone else's mind. I watched a video today. It was so good. He talked about a way that you can determine your success in something is how you measure things in accordance with money and time. And what he meant was, from a money standpoint, what are the increments in which you measure things? And so he's like, do you think of things in terms of $100? Is that one increment like $100? Is $1,000? Is $10,000? Is $100,000? Right? Because if you're measuring things of like let's say one increment, like one up and down, like $1 is actually $100,000 to you. If something's like 20 grand, you're gonna be like, why would I do that? Right? Like that's not even one increment. But if it's 100 grand, it's like, we can make 300 grand. Yeah. Let's focus on that. Like that's a good idea. If your increment's $10,000, then you're going to be thinking in $10,000 increments, right? Oh, that's a $30,000 thing. Okay, cool. Let's jump into that opportunity. But if you can partner with individuals who think in increments bigger than you, you will receive that by osmosis. They're sitting there talking about, oh, this is a $50,000 deal. This is a $42,000 deal. This is a $70,000 deal. This is a $10,000 deal. You're going to adopt that language, and it's just going to automatically expand your thinking by partnering with somebody else. The other thing on the flip side is the money, or not the money, the time. And there's two factors to time. One is the factor of, okay, how quickly do they communicate, right? Do they communicate in speed on the macro? Hey, I need this done. So boom, 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 boom. Let's knock it out. Communicate. And they talk fast in order to get to the end rather than one message. All right, I receive a message, 2 days later, and then I send a message, and 3 days later I get a message back. It's like, okay, that's a really slow time frame. It might take 15 days to get something done. But if you text me, it's like, boom, there you go. Boom, boom, boom. And it's like back. And all of a sudden that thing is done in 45 minutes rather than 15 days. That is a mindset thing. And it causes you to level up. And that's what you get from partnering with somebody else, is the increments in which they think and how they think about the business. And two, how they get things done on a scale that is replicatable and something that you can master and jump in. But then you got to figure out, okay, how do I provide value? How do I bring value to this person? And guys, I can tell you the number one thing you can do to bring value in the real estate investing industry is by learning how to find deals. If you know and you can learn how to find deals, if you've got the system of the lists to pull, the marketing to do, the conversations to have, or you're connected with somebody who's willing to share that from their operation, it's only going to make you guys stronger. Right? If a guy like myself, for instance, you bring a deal to me, and by bringing me one deal or doing a deal with me, it's like all of a sudden I open up and say, okay, well, here's how you can market. Here's how our acquisition conversation goes. Here's our contracts. Why don't you adjust it this way? Like by partnering with somebody like me, and I open up that system by us doing a deal together, that's so valuable to you, and you're bringing value to me because I might do a deal that makes me $30,000. And so there's an exchange where you might be a new wholesaler and you might, oh, let me find a cash buyer. And that cash buyer's like, yeah, I'll buy it, blah, blah, blah. Yep, send it to me. But he's not offering any value in exchange outside of buying the deal. Well, maybe you should find somebody who's willing to maybe mentor you a little bit or walk you through it in order to get the deal done so you guys can have a reoccurring relationship. And so I think from a starting standpoint, look at those entry points. I loved what you said, Marty. If you have money and you're just trying to multiply that money, look at lending it, single family, multifamily. Look at lending it and how you can maximize lending. You can get started by building a rental portfolio. You can get started by flipping the properties. You can get started by wholesaling and cutting in. And the biggest side, no matter it's commercial, single family, all the way around, is partner up with other people who are successful and find your niche of bringing value to them. And guys, that's the number one way that I've exploded my business is just connect. Even having done it for years, I connect with a Marty and all of a sudden we're sharing stuff and my business explodes from a mindset, from a knowledge, from strategy. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, Ronnie, let's stay right there because I think that's the winner, right? I think that's the hot sauce is partnering with someone who is maybe 4, 5, 7, 12 steps ahead of you. And the only way to do, well, shouldn't say that, but the two best ways of doing it, but the best way is to bring that person deals, right? So if someone would have told me when I first started, learn how to find deals, learn how to find off-market deals, then I think things would have been way faster and we would have grown quicker. So that's why I'm saying it now. So learn, like Ronnie said, to find off-market deals, because if you can do that and you can be good at that, because not a lot of people are and not a lot of people want to, then you can really explode it. The second thing, which is, again, for people who are starting with money, is, you provide the money to those people. Because just like if you provided a deal to Ronnie or me, and if you had someone, or if you were someone who had money that wanted to invest with us, well, we could still give you the pointers on how to start and build your business if you're also supplying, the money for us to do those things, right?
I love that, dude. I absolutely love that. So to circle back around, or to circle around, guys, we're talking about how to get involved in real estate. If you guys don't know what you're looking at, if our podcast actually comes out on Apple, iTunes, all of that every Thursday, and then we're live on Tuesdays. If you guys would do us a favor, like it, share this to your friends. If you're getting value from it, hit that thumbs up. If you're coming up with strategies, do that. If you have questions, put them below. So, Marty, jumping in, we've talked about the ways to jump in. We've talked about how you've started. We've talked about the pitfalls of buying correctly. Final thoughts, right? Like if you were in the crowd, if you were looking to get in 2021, jump in, change your business, what would be the one nugget or piece of advice you would give to the crowd?
The thing that comes to my head is you just jump in. I mean, you just buy the property. Guys, the thing with real estate, if you're buying it under market right now, right? I'm not talking about the house that's already been completely redone and you're buying that at the top of the market and you're competing with people. But if you're buying something that's a little more of a fixer upper and you're willing to look past that, it's a fixer upper and you can see the potential, then I don't think you can lose there. And it's because you're going to hold it anyway, right? So you're going to be holding it. And while you're holding it, you're going to be able to learn either from another investor, because you should be going to these events and talking to people anyway. You should be, on the Facebook pages and learning and connecting, right? But I would buy something it needs a little bit of work and just jump right in and then hold on to it. And that's going to be your MBA in real estate. You're going to be able to take a year. It's going to take a year, and it might be at first a bunch of money out of your pocket, right? It might be, more than you thought, but you're going to learn so much that it's not going to be a failure as long as you have a little bit of a, if you're worried, then you won't have to worry kind of mentality, right? If you're worried, then you don't need to worry. That's the mentality you want when you're jumping in. So that's what I would say for that, Ronnie.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Guys, I think that jumping in is such solid advice that a lot of times we're afraid because we're afraid of what we don't know. And sometimes you just got to jump in and learn how to swim. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Real estate is really three things, guys. Real estate is one, the ability to find deals, right? Like finding deals, getting leads is the core aspect of the activity you're doing. Number two is building your knowledge base, right? Gaining knowledge and strategy over time so you know how to exit a property, so you know how to properly transition the property, so you know how to deal with things as time goes on. And then what we've been talking about here is number three is it's your network. It's building that network. It's connecting with people who are going to help take you to the next level. And it's you providing value to them, right? And guys, when you think about like, what is value? What is value? It's telling them and providing something that they want. It's them believing that you can provide that value. It's doing it on the shortest possible time frame with very little risk, right? When you think of value, what can I bring to Marty that's very important to him, that he believes I can do, right? That I can do on a short time frame, and that there's not any risk, right? The greater you can package that, the more value it is to an individual. And so figure out ways when you're connecting to bring more value and build out that network, and you will get knowledge. You can read, you can watch YouTube, and then just get out in the field and start getting in the ring and taking the punches. It's kind of like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? They say when you start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're going to get your ass kicked for 6 months before you can do anything, right? 100%. Like that's kind of what real estate's about. You jump in and yeah, you're going to take some blows. You didn't realize. You're going to realize, oh gosh, how do I got to turn on the utilities. I got to get the grass mowed. Oh gosh, he just went over there. That's a $200 I shouldn't have to pay. Like all of that stuff is going to happen, and that's okay. That's part of the game. But as you get through it, the reward is going to outpace. That reward is going to outpace the cost that you've put in. And once it starts outpacing, and once you start learning and getting further and further ahead, that's where the freedom comes in, and that's where the lifestyle comes in. And it's just so exciting.
It is, and that's so beautifully said, because it changes my thoughts. Because guys, the thing is, it's like the pain is temporary, right? It really is. Like it always will. We're always going to get through that pain when you're figuring out, because there's no failure in this. There's struggle, and there's a lot of it. But the only time you're going to be a failure is if you quit, yes. Right? And unfortunately, guys, that's where the deals are, is on the people who do quit. So don't be someone else's deal. That's all.
100%. And guys, there's so much opportunity out there.
Yep.
That, I mean, for you to get a small slice, 10 deals, 15 deals, 30 deals, 75 deals a year, like this is a huge industry, right? Don't think, oh my gosh, there's nothing for me to do. I'm totally capped out. There's dudes doing thousands and thousands of deals a year, right? And so there's plenty for you to jump in and do 10, 15, 20, 30, 45 deals. There's plenty of room. And so with that said, guys, this is Real Estate Power Play. We come to you every Tuesday at noon. Our podcast on your favorite podcast servers come out on Thursday. If you would do it for us, hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're on YouTube. Check us out. And if you have any questions, reach out to me, reach out to Marty, reach out to Mark or Gabe. We'd love to help you guys. Until next time, peace.